See, I'll start sharing my screen. There you go, share sound, that's what I wanted. Okay. So yeah, as I say, it's just going to be sort of a rough introduction to Ultimate Frisbee and the basics of how the game works and a bit of a history of it. So basically, what a lot of people think of when they think of Frisbee is just throwing a Frisbee around on the beach, and Ultimate Frisbee is a lot more than that. We tend to sort of say it's a kind of a mix between netball and American football, due to various aspects of the game, which I'll explain later. But it's a lot more dynamic and active than a lot of people expect when they play Frisbee. But we are quite a casual club when it comes to competitive Frisbee. So we take people of all sort of backgrounds when it comes to sport. We take people who have done sport in the past and they've sort of got bored of that sport and they want to try something new. Or we take people who have never done sport in their life before, and most people end up getting quite into it and really enjoying it. So it is a sport that I think is for everyone. This is a video that I tried to insert. I don't know if it's going to work actually. Damn. This is meant to be a video of Ultimate Frisbee highlights. It worked when I had it as a PowerPoint, but it doesn't seem to want to open. If we have time at the end, it's just a video of basic Ultimate Frisbee highlights from the American Ultimate Frisbee League, because they've got a professional league. So I'll come back to that. I'll find some on YouTube at the end, just to sort of give you a flavour of what Ultimate Frisbee can be like at the sort of top end. But this is sort of a background of Ultimate Frisbee. So it started in 1968 by a group of students at Columbia University in New Jersey. I think it was not long after a new type of Frisbee or disc was invented, because Frisbee is actually a brand name, so we call them discs. But yeah, they invented, they saw what American football was like and kind of combined the two together. So the game works with end zones to score, like American football. And then from there, it spread sort of around the world, arriving to the UK. So in the mid 1970s, fairly casually to start off with, but over time it became more competitive. And in 1983, there was the first World Championship was held in Sweden, in Gothenburg, which is like sort of their second major city. And it has sort of continued and spiraled since then. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the world. It's played in 80 countries with over 70 million people. They're trying to get it into the Olympic Games, but there's a sort of few problems with it, and they're trying to sort of make it work. And hopefully maybe in, I think it would be 2032, maybe they might be angling for it, or possibly even 2028 to the LA Olympics, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, it's a rough mixture of netball and American football, but with a disc or a Frisbee. So the American football aspect is that you score within the end zones, which are the sort of darker green bits at the end of the pitch. And the netball aspect is that you can't run when you have the disc in your hand, but you can pivot like you can in netball. So you run to get the disc, but when you've got it in your hand, you can't. One of the key aspects of the game as well is that it's self-officiated, so we don't have referees or umpires. So it does require sort of a basic knowledge of the rules, which we integrate into our training sessions and teaching. But it also means that it's good for us as a university sport, because it makes it a lot cheaper, because we don't have to hire umpires. And where we play our games, at least outdoors, is on a council-owned pitch in Plymouth, so it's free. We do a few indoor tournaments or away tournaments that we will have to pay for to cover costs, but it's a lot cheaper sport than a lot of other societies are, and our membership costs reflect that. Spirit of the game is also very important, and spirit of the game is just making sure that you respect other players at all times, and that competitiveness doesn't compromise that. And that's one of the sort of the key founding factors of the sport, is that you are respectful to your opponent at all times, and when you make decisions, you discuss them in a fair way, and that you aren't biased or you don't cheat in any way. So it's much easier to do this because it's self-officiated, so it's the whole team aspect of making decisions. It happens between two people, but everyone throughout the whole of Ultimate is generally got a very good attitude towards the game, and they're very fair-minded, which is one of the things that drew me to the sport. I left football because I was a bit fed up with the people. Everyone in Ultimate Frisbee that I've come across is very nice, very well mannered, and it just makes for a more pleasant atmosphere playing the game, which comes from the spirit of the game, which is one of our key teachings as well. So these are some of the basic rules just summarized here. So I've already mentioned the fact that players cannot run with a disc, and that you score when the offensive team completes a pass into the end zone, and then you score a point. The amount of points in each game is a difference between indoor and outdoor. It's normally 15 points is the sort of maximum outdoors, and indoors more like 12 or so, but it's a shorter game, so it's slightly different. It also mentioned that it's self-refereed, so all players are in charge of sorting out any differing of opinions or any conflicts on the pitch. End zones is where you score the goals. Key aspects also is that Ultimate Frisbee is a non-contact sport. So a foul is one of the foul calls in Frisbee that you then discuss about, which we explain when we do our training. Whenever a pass is not completed, so either if the other team catches it or it gets dropped or the other team knocks it to the floor, then the other team that wasn't in possession takes the disc. So the possession switches quite rapidly. And whenever a point is scored, the team that scores it will then throw it back to the other team, and they switch ends. So it's quite a dynamic game. It changes around very quickly. So you've got to be a bit switched on, but at the start it begins quite slowly, so we sort of integrate players well, and we sort of explain the rules quite gradually and gently. And yeah, the bottom left point is sort of summarizing that. So when a point has been scored, everyone lines up at the front of their end zone, and then the other team throw it, so that the possession switches every point. So that's sort of a summary of the rules. Also, players have got 10 seconds to throw the disc. That is outdoors. Indoors, it's 8 seconds. So again, it's helping to maintain the flow of the game and making sure it's quite dynamic and fast paced. So some basic aspects of the gameplay. It's split into offense and defense, as I've mentioned. Offense is the people who have the disc and they throw it around. They can't move when they're on the disc, that sort of thing. And the job of the defense is to stop them from scoring, to try and get the disc, or to try and force an error, which leads to the disc falling onto the floor, which means that the defensive team then get the disc. And there's different roles within each aspect, so each offense and defense section. So offense, we generally split it into two roles: handlers and cutters. The handlers generally are people who are good at throwing the disc. They're good at catching. They are good at sort of tactic. They're good at tactical aspects of Frisbee, so their movement is good and they're good at creating opportunities. And they're generally just the better throwers of the disc. And then the cutters, to start off with, are either sort of more inexperienced players, or at a higher level, the people who are good at running and getting into space to receive the disc. So a cut is basically a sprint into space to then receive the disc. And generally, they'll either then throw it further up the field or give it back to the handler, sort of to reset the play. The main offense we do is what's called a vertical stack, which I've got a picture of here. A stack in Frisbee is basically a line, and a vertical stack is a vertical line up the middle of the pitch, which then creates space down the left and right hand side for people within the stack to then cut out into. Because if everyone's sort of mishmash all over the pitch, then there's no space for anything. So that's the sort of general thing that we start off with, and when we teach people the offensive side, then we'll be mainly explaining this. And then the blue dot down here with the Frisbee is the handler, so they stand a bit away and they can kind of see what's going on, and it's the job of the handlers to escape the defenders who would be marking them and receive the disc. The defense is split into match marking or zone marking. So match marking, which is also known as man marking, but we call it match to be more inclusive, is where you mark a specific player for the whole of the point, and you basically just follow them around like a dog everywhere they go. Zone marking, conversely, is where you mark a specific space rather than the person. So you're trying to block off specific areas of the field, or prevent people from throwing to particular areas by your positioning, as opposed to following someone around. So it's kind of more anticipation rather than trying to follow someone. Again, I don't think this video is going to work, because it's a bit of a shame. It's just, this was to illustrate the different ways that you can throw a Frisbee. In this video, the guy demonstrates 80 different ways, which might be quite surprising. I didn't realize when I first started that you could throw a Frisbee more than one way, to be honest. 80 ways is quite excessive, and some of them are sort of joke throws that you'd never actually do during a game. But I was just going to play a few to illustrate sort of the wide variety of Frisbee, and trying to, like, again, show that it's more than just sort of chucking a disc around. But that video is not going to work, so we might come back to that. So within the UK, Ultimate Frisbee is run by sort of an overarching body called UK Ultimate. It's kind of like the FA, Football Association, in football. They are the ones that make decisions about the rules, about competitions, and currently about COVID regulations. They sort of follow government guidance with that, and they let everyone know sort of below club level, national teams and university teams what they should be doing. So there are a number of national teams. There's mixed teams, women's teams, and open teams, which open is basically there's no gender restrictions placed on that team. So it generally tends to be more male inclined, but it is open to all genders. And mixed is where you have to have a specific number of males and females on the team. And I'm not sure about the rules for sort of non-binary or for other genders, but the sport generally is quite inclusive, so they will have provisions for that, but I'm not sure what they are. So yeah, there's a number of different teams that compete in indoors, outdoors, and beach tournaments, because beach Frisbee is obviously a thing, because that's one of the most common places for people to play. So there's Ultimate Frisbee tournaments that we compete in as well, that are very fun, and it's a lot harder than you'd think. Running on sand is a bit of a nightmare, but it's a lot of fun. And then club teams, there's one club in Plymouth that's called Plymouth Ultimate, which is a bit confusing. It's very similar to our name, but there's club teams all across the UK, and they compete in various different competitions. To the university teams, which play in tournaments that are normally run by Bucks, which is the British University Sport Coordinator. But we also participate in tournaments that are open to all types of teams. So we'll play university-specific tournaments and also club or more open tournaments throughout the year. We do a mixture of sort of more competitive tournaments where we aim to qualify for national competitions. So we start regional, we aim to qualify for national, or alongside a lot of fun tournaments that we play. The first tournament we have planned is Plymouth Beginners, which is our own tournament that we run at Marjon University. And as a committee, we plan that throughout the summer. We hire out the hall, and we have a load of teams come from across the UK, across the Southwest mainly, but across the UK it's open to. And we have a beginner division, which is basically aimed at trying to integrate new players into Ultimate Frisbee and give them an idea of the sport, as well as an experienced division, which is for players who've played for a year or more. Although this year, because of the fact that there's not much experience because of COVID last year, we're allowing people who joined last year to play as well. And then at the very bottom there is youth teams. So this is not very common in Ultimate Frisbee, to be honest. A lot of people don't really hear about Ultimate Frisbee until they either go to university or potentially even later. But there are some youth teams across England, and a lot of the people who play in youth teams actually end up playing for the national teams, because it's sort of one of those things where if you can play Frisbee before university and you're any good at all, sort of if you can run and jump, you stand a very good chance of getting into a national team because there's so little competition. But yeah, there's one near Exeter, and they're dotted around, but they're few and far between. But they are trying to get into schools more and sort of increase the grassroots youth level of Bolton Frisbee. And yeah, at the bottom I mentioned that there's regional and national tournaments that we compete in both indoors and outdoors throughout the year. So us as a team, we're a mixed gender club, so we're open to all genders, and we sort of pride ourselves in trying to have an inclusive family style atmosphere. So we welcome all people, we try and integrate people into the club. We have a mixture of social activities outside of training, both drinking and non-drinking, because a vast proportion of our club don't drink at all, if not just a very little amount. So unlike a lot of sports societies, I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure you have an idea of the sort of clubs. We are very, very relaxed with our so-called drinking culture, pressure.
Yeah, so you're not known for the harsh freshers initiations then?
No, definitely not. I mean, if that's the sort of thing you want to do, then there'll be people who are more into that sort of thing. But I don't really drink, and Olivia, my sister, doesn't drink at all, and we've never really felt any pressure at all to do it. People who play Frisbee, I think in general, but particularly our club, they just aren't like that. They want people to have a good time, whether they drink or not. It's entirely up to them. But we will have social events where there is drinking involved, but it's entirely your choice. So yeah, we sort of try and apply that across the board. We're quite good, and we've got a lot of experience of welcoming new beginner players and integrating them into our club through sort of the training sessions and socials we do, as well as our beginner tournament, which I find that like we do it sort of a couple of weeks in. I think it's about the 17th of October this year. It's that weekend, but it's normally that point where people just like sort of see ultimate Frisbee and what it can be and get really into it. At least that's what I've experienced so far. Yeah, we have trainings Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Sundays. There's absolutely no obligation to go to all of them. If any of them, you can come when you want to. Most people who join do tend to go to all of them just because they really enjoy it, and especially if they've not played before, they see a very quick sort of progression. Starting from nothing, you can learn quite quickly because everyone's sort of thrown a Frisbee before, but when you sort of get taught even a little bit of how to play, you sort of see that progression, and it normally hooks people in quite well. But we don't have a problem if you turn up to one training session a week, how it's entirely up to you. But we've got a lot of trainings if that's what you want. Mondays and Tuesdays are indoors, Wednesdays and Sundays are outdoors, so you get a mixture of both types of Frisbee. So for 2021, we've sort of, as a club, come up with some goals. The main one, because of COVID, is just to play as much ultimate as possible. A lot of the stuff was cancelled last year, so we really want to get back and throw ourselves into tournaments and games and just see how we get on, which is related to having fun playing, which we try to say is the most important thing. Often we play worse when we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do well. So having fun often makes it more enjoyable. People want to stay, they want to play more, and also it ends up with us playing better. It seems like as a club we just perform and we don't put pressure on ourselves. As part of that is promoting the next generation of players. So this doesn't apply to you as much, obviously, because you're a master's student, you're not going to be around for as much, but it does because that's involved integrating new players. So it won't just apply to freshers who are in their first year. It's everyone who joins. We want to make them feel welcome and make them want to stay and play in the future. Because even if you don't stay in Plymouth, there are other clubs you wanted to stay around or go elsewhere to play Frisbee. The next aspect is improving physical and mental health of our members. So obviously physical health is very important. We're a sports club, so we want that, but also mental health. with everything that's been going on for the last 18 months, we're very aware of. And as a club, we've got on our social media, for instance, with Liv again, she's planning to do mental health Mondays with just some like little tips on our Instagram stories, and we're always there if anyone needs any support, and we can offer some guidance. Liv is also doing a bit of a mental health talk similar to this in a few weeks' time. She's had a bit of experience. She's a medical student, so she's had a bit of training about it. So that's something that's very important to us. And there's a lot of evidence that sports and mental health are very closely linked, and they sort of help improve each other. So that's something we really want to promote. And then in terms of competitions, qualify at mixed indoor regionals. In the big first weekend of November, there is an indoor tournament that is a mixed gender tournament. Sorry, I'm just going to close my window. Someone is shouting very loudly. Our aim is to qualify. Normally, it's the top 5 teams who then go to the national mixed indoor tournament, which can be held anywhere in the UK. Not last year because it didn't happen, but the year before, our women's tournament qualified and they went to the national tournament in Scotland, which is really good. So our aim is to do that for our mixed team. But we also have a men's team that will be doing it and a women's team. So we want to be as competitive as possible with that, but it depends on how many players we have and the sort of like the ability after having not played much Frisbee for a little while. Which is what I've summarised at the bottom, competing at other tournaments and bucks. So we have Wednesday tournaments. We, as a club, compete in the men's league, which is what it officially is, but we send mixed gender teams. We were the first team, we definitely in the Southwest, we think potentially in England to compete in the men's bucks league with a mixed gender team. It's something we're quite proud of. We have in the Bucks League, we are called Plymouth Men's 1 still, which I've tried very hard to change to either Plymouth Mixed or just Plymouth, but they are being very stubborn and not letting us change it. So we're officially known as Plymouth Men's 1, but that's a mixed team. It's open to everyone. And it's something we take a lot of pride in. So if you want any more information, we've got email address, Facebook, Instagram, and obviously I assume you've seen our UPSU website page because that's where you would have booked the event from. And that's it. I sort of rambled on for a bit longer than I'd expected there. Do you have any questions at all or anything you want me to go back to?
No, that all sounds great. I didn't know anything about ultimate frisbee, so I found it interesting that you can't move when you have the frisbee, because I just assumed that everyone just ran around with frisbee. So I got that wrong. But cool, it sounds good.
Perfect.
It's more like how sporty do you have to be? Like, not in terms of fitness, because like you said, you've got beginner people, but as in like, do you have to wear like proper trainers? Like, is there like protocols on what like?
We generally advise, because there is running involved and there's sort of like changing direction. We do generally advise having some like modicum of sports kit, but we are doing some taster sessions. I think the first one's the 28th of September, and if you turn up to those and you don't have proper sports kit, it's not a problem. But just I'd advise something that you can move around quite easily in. And at that point, if you decide you wanted to like play more, then I probably would advise some like sports shoes of some description. You can get like I don't know, like cheap sort of trainers for like 20 quid that'd probably do the job. And we have our own kit as a club, which you can choose to buy. Other than that, for training, it's just sports kit is probably advisable. Yeah, but in terms of being sporty as a person, there's no requirements at all. As I say, we've had people who love sport, we've people who have always hated sport, and we found that they sort of both types of people end up enjoying it fairly equally. They play different ways, obviously, but they both types engage with the sport really well and get integrated. So yeah, it's entirely up to you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, that all sounds good. I'll try and join a taster.
Brilliant. If you want any more information, let's say we've got social media, or you can message me directly if you want to, or I think you can message on the UPSU website. But yeah, our first tasting sessions on the 28th. We'll also be there at the Freshers Fair on the 23rd. I think it is this Wednesday, the week before, if you wanted some more information. But yeah, feel free. I'd definitely be very happy for you to come.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining.
That's all
Hopefully
right.
see you in a couple of weeks' time. Enjoy your course. Hopefully it goes well.
Cool. Yeah, you too.